all, my name is Jess, and tonight I'm going to be talking about 3 laws that affect teachers in the United States. The first of which is the No Child Left Behind Act. The second is Individuals with Disability Education Act, and the third is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And I'm going to start with the No Child Left Behind Act. So this act was signed into law by President Bush in 2002, and the goal of the act was to create a set of standards that all public education schools were required to follow in order to help disadvantaged students. And those standards included mandatory annual testing, it included report cards by state and district, it included proof of academic progress, and it included making sure all teachers were qualified to teach whatever specific subject they were teaching. So I'll touch on briefly and give an example of what those measures entailed. So the mandatory testing was required annually for grades 3 through 8, and that had to be done in reading and math by 2005 and 2006 school year. And then by the 2007 and 2008 school year, states were required to test students in science at least once in elementary, middle, and high school. And in the beginning of the 2002 and 2003 school year, the states had to pull together an annual report of student achievement by districts, and then the districts had to show student achievement for each of those schools. And then states and their individual schools had to ensure that all students were achieving what was basically defined as proficient level, or this academic progress idea, on state tests by the 2013 and 2014 school year. And schools also had to show annual progression towards state goals. Now, if a Title I school did not show progression or meet those goals within the 2 years, the school would receive assistance from outside sources, and then they would also allow students to have the option of attending a different public school, which I thought was really interesting. And then in terms of highly qualified teachers, by the end of the 2005 and 2006 school year, schools were required to make sure all teachers had to be highly qualified in the subject that they were teaching. And basically, highly qualified means that teachers had to prove a certification of their mastery of their specific subject field. So, as a result of the No Child Left Behind Act, additional grants and funding changes occurred. There was a grant called Reading First, which was created to help districts institute a scientific research-based reading program for kids in Ks 3 through 8. And priority for this grant was given to schools in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And then also the No Child Left Behind Act changed the amount of funding for schools with high population of poor families. Specifically, the No Child Left Behind Act has left many teachers, administrators, and schools frustrated with the requirements they're supposed to achieve, mainly because in some cases, teachers and administrators feel that the requirements are unattainable, and specifically unattainable within the timeline, and in some cases unfair. So, in result, my thought is that it appears the No Child Left Behind Act needs to be more accurate, needs to be adjusted to more accurately fit each school and its demographics, rather than just setting standards across the board for all schools in all states, while also sticking to the main goal of holding schools accountable for continual student progress. So now I'm going to talk about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and it's a federal law designed to make sure that all public schools meet and address the needs of special education students, which is really important because a large population of the students in the United States are special education. Schools are required to provide special education resources to students that are eligible as defined in their individual education programs, or IEPs. So IDEA also guarantees all students, despite their disabilities, a free appropriate public education, or FAP, in least restrictive environment. And this is really important because this does not only pertain to special education students, this pertains to students living in the 50 states and all of the U.S. colonies. And according to the National Center for Learning Disabilities, 40% of U.S. students have been diagnosed with a specific learning disability. And it's why this act is so important, because there's just so many students that need this additional assistance in order to be successful students in school. And in order for a student to qualify for special education assistance, the student must have a disability and show that because of that disability, they cannot progress as a student without assistance from the special education programs provided in the school. And then once that is determined, parents are required, they're actually required to work with the school to develop and identify those special education needs, and then to work on the IEPs, or the individual education programs. And these are a formal contract that outlines the methods and support that the students will receive while they are a special education students. And these IEPs are required to be renewed annually and reviewed annually as well. It's really important that there is parent input with these IEPs and support. And my one thought in regards to teachers and how this specifically affects teachers is the fact that if a teacher has more than one student within an IEP in their classroom, but only has one designated teacher for those IEP students, it could cause problems addressing all of their student needs, whether they have an IEP or not. And it's important that all students have access to the support that they need within the classroom in order to be successful. The final law that I'm going to be talking about that affects teachers is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. It's a federal law that prohibits the release of educational records without adult consent, and it also allows parents and anyone over the age of 18 to make changes to any inaccuracies that they see within their educational records. And the schools are allowed to release student names and phone numbers only if they notify parents that this will occur and give them the chance to opt out of releasing this type of information. So I thought that this could potentially be a problem for teachers that might want to look at student data and analyze it to figure out better ways of reaching their students and dealing with educational concerns. But an exception does exist within the law, and this exception allows teachers and administrators to the right of the student records, or to look through those student records, assuming that they possess what they call legitimate education interests to those records. And also in 2008, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act was reviewed and updated so that educational records could be released for data educational purposes as long as those identities to those specific data were removed from the data. So thank you very much for listening in on the 3 policies that affect teachers throughout the United States. I look forward to speaking to you at a later date. Have a good night.